things to learn. Now, next up, we have Tech for Good panel, and I hope you're all having a good time. And this is a wonderful session lined up for you all, where we are going to be talking about how can we use technology for good. So we have a panel discussion here, and before we dive right in, let me just give you a quick intro of the speakers, the panelists that we are going to be having here. We have Shalini Singh, Sustainability Head, India, APAC, and EMEA, VMware. Welcome, Shalini. So she's a senior manager, sustainability operation, where she leads strategy and operational alignment with functional teams for sustainable business operation and VMware's carbon accounting and CDP reporting. Prior to VMware, she worked for Stanford University, leading carbon accounting, sustainable IT program, and demand side energy management. And as a leader in the ESG industry, Shalini never planned her education on career or corporate sustainability, but it's rather an outcome of multiple breakaways. She has successfully demonstrated influence, leadership, and unbridled passion in this field, having navigated her career in design, operations, finance. She's a technologist at heart and trained architect and an MBA from San Jose State University. Welcome, Shalini. Next up, we have Aruna. Aruna is a scientist by training, and she has a PhD from Urbana-Champaign. She's worked on building intelligent ML-based products in payments, retail, technology services. She has a huge amount of ML and technology experience with her. And apart from her regular jobs, where she builds and advises teams on ML-heavy projects and businesses, she has been working with Magasul, which is her agricultural enterprise with small farmers. So what does Magasul do is they partner with small farmers to help improve their yields and land usage patterns with the hope to make agriculture both scientific and sustainable. And they really hope to get their farmers to triple or quadruple their income in 5 years and have been on the field with 2,000 plus families across 160 villages. This is marvelous. Welcome, Aruna. So glad to have you all here. Third up, we have Rajan Sridharan. Rajan is a principal program manager with Microsoft Edge. He manages the Edge EDU, Edge in Education community, and the Edge add-ons dev community. Before joining Microsoft, he was head of technology for Network Technical Training Foundation. Previously, he headed graduate higher training for Cognizant, worked as a EdTech research fellow under Professor Marmar Mukhopadhyay, and also tried launching a mobile learning startup. He started his career before with Infosys before switching gears to EdTech. Varad is passionate about educational technology. He aspires to transform global education scale, one learner personalized at a time. This is wonderful, Varad. So glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us today. And now we have our moderator, Ramya Victor. Ramya has 8+ years of experience in the software industry in the domain of network and storage. She has a master's degree in software engineering and PG diploma in AI and ML. She's the lead engineer for a file system functional team at VMware India R&D. She leads the AI/ML focus group in Women Who Code Bangalore chapter, and she's passionate and dramatic, voracious reader. And there is a lot of, she's like a very active DNI evangelist. She has won Global Borathon and VMware external hackathons. She actively represents sessions on AI, ML, cloud, virtualization across different communities and colleges. And she's the director of Women Who Code Bangalore chapter, an international nonprofit dedicated to inspiring women to excel in technology careers. She's the GSI GHCI Grace Hopper committee member of AIML track for the past 3 years. Wonderful. I cannot wait to get this started. So without further ado, let's have all the panelists and let's get right into it.
Yeah, you're not audible.
Can you guys hear me now? No?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. We are trying to be resilient with technology by handling the glitches, just like the team of our conference. So thanks for bearing for that short technical glitch. So We have a wonderful panel today. So we have Aruna, Rajan, and Shalini, and each of them are a champion in their own domain in terms of how to make tech for a good cause usage. So let me quickly kickstart with Aruna. So I know Aruna from quite some time, and I'm really motivated by her. So there is this fascination thing that Aruna has done in a career, and she has done a complete transition from IT to her full time investment into her initiative called Magasul. So Aruna, what is the exact story of Magasul, and what motivated you to do this complete transition from your role? Because I know you were in a very good position as a director, and you left that, and now we are into a full-time initiative of Magasul. Could you shed some light on that, Aruna?
Sure. Thanks, Ramya, for always exaggerating my achievements. And I'm just a regular person. I think I go wherever interesting problems go and take me. Uh, Let me first explain a little bit about what we try to do at Magasul. It's a agricultural enterprise. It wasn't conceived to be not for profit, but it is running in a not for profit mode. And what its vision is that small and marginal farmers, who are farmers that have less than 2 acres of land, and an acre is roughly 4,000 square meters. If you have less than this land holding, you're almost 80% of Tamil Nadu by population, by land holding population. And overall in India, there's about 50 to 60% farmers actually have only less than 2 acres of land, which is actually very small for producing anything and being profitable. So that's why there is a very large group of people that are not able to earn sustainably from agriculture. By sustainably, what I mean is that most of them earn less than $100 to $200, or something like 30,000 rupees a year, which is quite small for a family of 4 or 5, right? So our aim is, how do we help these folks to double their income, to triple their income, and to grow it to a sustainable level, even though they're cultivating very small pieces of land. And when we looked at how to do that, we found that there's a huge gap on what they can do on their land and versus what they are able to because of lack of investment. If they switch to automation, if they switch to more scientific methods of farming, it was possible to increase their yields. So we started in 2012. Largely, my husband does all the hard work. I fund it and do the easier parts of the work. And what he's been doing is really working alongside them on a trial piece of land and trying to demonstrate how using better soil testing methods, better irrigation methods, just some slightly advanced machinery for transplantation if it is a paddy crop. Each of these can actually make a huge difference to your yield. So what we've been doing is working with them, trying to figure out how to get their yields to go up, trying to figure out how to increase their income, how to employ more people to do what we do, so that they are locally available in rural Tamil Nadu and they're able to help these farmers. So that is Magasul. Why did I leave? I didn't look at it as leaving or staying. It just reached a point where for us to actually make a proper difference to these folks, we had to encourage them to diversify away from rice. We wanted to get women farmers also involved, wanted to get them to be the key decision makers. We also wanted to sell their produce back in the urban markets. And it just became too overwhelming for my husband to do it alone. And we needed one more hand on the field. So that really was the reason. I didn't look at it as giving up anything. I just looked at it as doing what interests and what has a big impact. It is almost 2,000 farmers and their families that we work with. So I think for a single person or two people or a group of 2 or 3 people, it is the hugest impact we can potentially have. And that's what motivates each of us actually to wake up and go to work.
True, true. Well said, Aruna. I think that's a good point to note. It's not like you're giving up, rather, you're starting a new venture, right? Am I audible? Yeah, great. So Shalini, because Aruna did spoke about sustainability in the field of agriculture was something that she's striving to improve along with the husband with the transition to the new domain, right? Not living per se. So I know that you have been a champion of sustainability. So just for folks out there, Shalini is a sustainability champion back in VMware, and she's a huge inspiration for quite a number of folks back in the company. So, Shalini, what is your take on sustainability? What kind of motivated you to choose sustainability as your main field of focus? Because when you talk about tech for good, sustainability is also one of the major aspect in that, isn't it?
Yes. Ramya,
Yeah,
can
yeah,
you
I
hear
can
me
hear you,
well?
Shalini. Yeah, all of us can.
Okay, great. Yeah, so actually, I started out in sustainability not by design. I'm a STEM graduate, but very unusual STEM field. I'm an architect, not the software architect, but the building architect. And I actually had many breakaways in my life, and I've landed in sustainability because I felt like this is the field where the technical skills, the business skills that I had acquired in my MBA program, and my really passion for evangelizing, everything comes together, and that's how I have come to sustainability as my career for now over 12 years. And sustainability, so let me just put sustainability in the context of business, and Aruna's work is exceptional for marginalized farmers. But sustainability is important even for-profit businesses, right? Because all businesses exist for the society because they're making products or services or goods for the society and for the community. And this society, this community lives on the planet. And we only have one planet that can sustain human life at this point, and we don't have, this is the only plan. We don't have a plan B. And so I guess that is how sustainability connects to businesses. Is the business running in an environmentally, socially responsible way? That is the premise of business sustainability. But if I extrapolate that more generally, sustainability is this compromising what will be available for the next generation. So we are not overusing the natural resources because many natural resources are not priced correctly. The classic example is water or the pollution that we do to soil or to the ecosystem, to the human biodiversity. There isn't a price to all that. Some things are priced, everything is not priced. So that in a nutshell is the connection of sustainability to business. And when I say about this fact that we don't have another planet to live on, it's very funny that my teenager son will say that, Mama, we can go and humans can inhabit another planet, right? And now all this space travel has happened. But for now, for the current future, this is where we have to live, and we have to make sure that we are not overutilizing what is there, and we are keeping it healthy and sustainable for the long run.
True, true. I mean, that is a very good analogy, Shalini. Nowadays, generation feel that, if not this planet, there is always another place to inhabit. Yeah, but having said that, right, how you said, we cannot let go of this planet, right? We need to keep it resourceful, at least for few more generations to follow.
Yes.
That was a good insight. True. So, Varadarajan, we know you are more into this edge education, right? So, could you shed some lights on, how learning on the web can be made more adaptable in terms of having it for a good cause and yet sustainable, so that the repercussions for the environment is not bad? Because you are using, end of the day, when you're using technology or online portals for education, right, there is a consumption of resource, electricity and all of that, so in a way that it is consuming additional resource compared to the teachers who are teaching it in classroom, right? So but still we want nowadays generation to use the latest technology to learn most of the things through online portals and all, right? So you are into edge in Microsoft, right? So how do you guys think about having sustainability as the main focus area yet give education to a lot of folks through web? So what is your take on that, about the various technologies that Microsoft is working in terms of online education and edge education, Varadarajan?
Thanks, Ramya. Thanks for the fantastic question. Right. I think I won't be able to top up the other panelists. I think they are super experienced and super. They come from superbly relevant areas for today. But to your question, right? Online education, I think, saw a huge spike. Thanks to COVID, and if not for that, we probably would be doing this in person, right? There's a lot of hidden costs. You're right about there's a lot of things uh, that go behind the scene that you don't look at when you actually learn online, when you learn through a platform. But again, it's only substituting. You see a different set of costs when you do it offline, where you see a different set of costs when you do it online. People traveling to a school, people traveling to that's all carbon fuel. There's a lot of other costs that come in when you actually do in person versus doing online. The key element of online learning is more about of course, people say anytime, anywhere, and a lot of buzzwords with online learning, right? But the key element, if you really look at it, is technology is a leveler, right? So in the sense that leaving access to technology aside, that's a bigger problem to crack. That's a problem that requires systemic thinking, that requires systemic problem solving, that requires a different lens to crack it. But leaving the access part of it aside, uh, you know online learning platforms that are built for it, tools like Microsoft that are built for it, we actually look at how we can make it accessible to or inclusive for every type of a learner. So if you really look at learning in an in-person context, a teacher actually has that I would call it a peripheral vision of how each learner is actually absorbing what is being transacted, how are they actually learning it, are they struggling. So there's a lot of visual cues that come in, there's a lot of body language that comes in. So a lot of things that actually are taken for granted when you actually do it in person. But when you do it online, there's a lot of different things that are hidden, and that's where tools can actually play a lot of critical part. For example, how does the technology make it accessible for everybody? Can a slow learner go about learning it? Can a dyslexic learner go about learning? If you give an assignment about reading a reading assignment, is every learner progressing at the same pace? And these are some of the areas. Just an example, right? Is the reading progress, for example, that's one of the recent things that we had launched in Teams, where we can look at, teachers can look at how the learners are progressing. Are they progressing in the same place? Are they struggling with a particular pronunciation? So it really kind of gives a different set of tools that you otherwise won't have in a in-person classroom. So it's not so easy to compare. It's not apples to apples to compare, in-person classroom with an online learning. Online learning comes with a different set of challenges and a different set of advantages and disadvantages. But to a large extent, if I have to kind of crisply put it there, if we can build the habit of learning, I think online learning is the best way to go, right? So if the learner is intrinsic in what they learn, how they learn, why they're learning, what they're learning, if that intrinsic nature is actually set up upfront, online learning can actually be a big boon for everybody. And actually, it can actually make learning sustainable, and it can reach different corners of the world without actually having to kind of shift classrooms, transfer classrooms, move students and teachers all across the cities, and get the learning done. So it can actually be truly impactful if we can build intrinsic learners, and if we can build that habit upfront. Hope that answers.
Got it. Yeah, got it, Varadarajan. That's really nice. See, with changes in time, right, we should learn how to be resilient. And yet, in that resilient journey, we should not forget the fact about how to be sustainable and try to do innovations that keep sustainability as a goal, right? Because as you said, online learning has a lot of resource consumption, but sustainable development, like how Shalini mentioned, that definitely adds value in terms of educating people to use tech for good, right? That is a good point. So having said that, right, Aruna, I just wanted to ask you, like, as Varadarajan said, right, COVID kind of gave a boom market for online learning, right? So I see your bio where you tell that you are a scientist with theoretical physics as your specialization, right? And now you are into an initiative on agriculture, on to educating people about how to use technology for a better yield, right? With this full transition from your specialization to agriculture, because you have been a scientist and now you're coming down to the level of the farmers, trying them to understand about the importance of using tech for good. What were the challenges you faced generally when making people adapt technology for a good cause, right? Especially the farmers. That sudden transition might have been a bumper for them, wasn't it? So could you
Yeah,
shed some light on that transition and what are the challenges you had, Aruna?
sure. I think great question, Ramya. Firstly, my husband pushing me a lot. He has been doing bulk of the earning trust with farmers and working with them on the ground since 2011. So it's been a long time. I was generally known as the lady who visits now and then, has a PhD, and speaks with a funny accent. That I started out on that note, and obviously, as city dwellers, as rich people, as people who have fancy degrees, we automatically alienate those that we intend to work with because they are rightly suspicious of anybody who seems like a
True.
smartass. So initially, I think we did seem like smartasses, like people who did not understand the culture, for instance, if you're working in the village, caste is a big deal, and just calling it casteism is not useful because it's a way of life, and you might hate it. And I do think it is regressive, but there's no point in pontificating on that. That's their way of life, right? So it took a lot of adjusting. Also, it's unusual for a woman to be on the field, for a woman to speak her mind. A woman is generally looked at as needs to be tamed by her husband. So I think most of the brickbats my husband received, I used him as a cushion, and blamed all my smart-assness on him. And learning-wise, I think one of the things we pick up, although I'm not very proud of calling myself a theory physics person, nobody should do theory physics on the record. For people, don't ruin your lives. There are better things to do with life. But one good thing you learn in science is how to think from scratch, how not to assume too much, and how to formulate a problem by listening to people as well as measuring things on the ground. And that is, I think, the advantage that somebody like I or my husband had. Both of us are from physics. And of course, I've worked in ML and stuff. He has been always in this area. So we have relative disadvantages and advantages. I think what helped me make this transition was just reading, talking, measuring, and then going by the data, going by the anecdotes, trying to formulate what is the problem, and coming without any biases. I'm trying not to fit my background to what can be done. Like, it's very tempting to go in and say, I know how to code or I know how to do ML. How can I use ML to solve a problem? But then a science training teaches you, which every engineer goes through. Don't start with a hammer and then go looking for the nail. Just first understand, is there a nail? What is the problem? Is there a crack? And then you try and figure out what should you use, and you're smart enough to understand and use it the right way. So at least that's the approach we have used. And over 10 to 11 years, we've built that trust by showing impact, by also getting very integrated with them as a community. We sometimes live with them, we eat with them, and we also have lots of social overlaps. So that makes you one of them, makes you at least on the weekday one of them, even if you have a different weekend life, and even if one of you, lives away and mostly has a different life, it's still a shared life in some sense, right? And then it's mostly relationship building. It's the same as how things work in the corporate. We think that we are a extremely progressive lot, but we are not. We have our own biases in the corporate. All of you who work in engineering organizations, you have to align people, you have to align stakeholders. They have their own biases. Maybe it's not casteism, it's something else, right? So, and we too, I also have my biases. So it is really about just being open-minded and knowing that you are going from a differently biased group to a differently biased group and trying to empathize with them, understand, and then not judge as much as possible. Don't let the work be affected by your judgment, but let it be affected by what you are measuring and seeing. And then it's really just work on the ground that builds your confidence as well as theirs, that you can do something. You're not all that bookish or removed from reality that you would only preach and go away.
That's well said, Aruna. I mean, I really like the way you said that biases do exist everywhere you go. It's right. It's just the perspective you look at. And that is one important thing, right? When we talk about tech for good, people always think that, okay, how can I use AI ML? How can I use this to, solve this problem? How can I use cloud computing, IoT? It's like all tech. They just want to pick up tech and try to solve the problem. But first we need to understand the problem. That point was very well nailed by you telling about, first understand the existence of the nail and then figure out the hammer to solve it. So that is I think that's a very good takeaway, I would say, right? So thanks for that thoughts, Aruna. So Shalini, as Aruna mentioned, right, the thing is the biases and the perspective and challenges are there always whenever you try to create an impact, be it tech for good, be it sustainability, right? Like maybe Vardarajan, be it educating people about using sustainable products for online education. So we all have challenges, and the challenges are pretty much the same, just that the people and the stakeholders are like different, right? And how you adapt to them. So what is your take, Shalini, in terms of being, see, most of us are working in IT industry, right? So the moment, like we have a wonderful panelist like Aruna is into full-time sustainability kind of a role, and Varadarajan is into online, and you're into a company working on how to empower employees for sustainability. So how can we start small, Shalini, like being a coder, being a tester, right? What does sustainability mean for us? Like, do we have any role to play in that, or is it only that the big shots talk about tech for good and we just do our daily routine as is? I mean, what is the role that each one of us can do?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ramya, because I think every time you have to connect the big picture to what action individuals can take, right? Your question is specific to the coding community and all the folks who are on this webinar. So I would say if you so just think about your day-to-day work, right? So one is what is the dev environment you're using to develop the code. So and not every team is the same. Some teams might use cloud, some will use internal cloud, some may use public cloud. What is the dev environment you're using, and can you use it the most efficiently, right? Which is like, if you're provisioning to develop your setup, are you over provisioning what you want to do your development work, right? And this then extends from you to your team, to your larger team, right? So in VMware, we are trying to see how different teams are utilizing whatever host they want, right? Is the CPU utilization good? Are they making sure they're running as many VMs on those hosts? The cloud is being used the most effective way. Similarly, if you're using public cloud, are there VMs which are powered off at the disks, or the storage not attached? Or there are lots of tools now in the market to see all these cost optimization, because ultimately you will be spending money, and cost is also a proxy of power and carbon, right? So if you're wasting money, obviously you're wasting power and you're wasting all the other resources. So I would say start with the development environment, right? And then also what software you're developing, right? So every application is a workload. So if the way it's being built, the way it will run in the environment that will run, you can start thinking about what are the elements of that design. So right now, because this is a very emerging field, right? People do give consideration to performance, they give consideration to security, they give consideration to operability, upgradability. But can we start thinking about giving consideration to sustainability as a first class metric in software development, right? That is a very, very slowly emerging field, because it needs mindset shift, right? And why I'm bringing this up is because at the end of the day, every software actually runs on a piece of hardware, right? It runs on a piece of either it will run on server, or it will run on your laptop or your phone. and then something will run on the cloud that will run in a data center. So there are systemic environmental benefits if you're reducing on the demand side, because then the supply side can get that benefit, because there's a lot of inefficiency in the system overall that is not visible to everybody. So coming back to your question, where can you start? You can start small, thinking about what is the environment I'm using for my development. Then start thinking about what am I designing, and am I using the best libraries? Am I designing the services that are the most efficient? And I will tell you that these things are very nascent. These tools don't exist. These measurements don't exist. But I think we have to start first with this mindset shift. So that's where I would leave it.
Yeah,
Ramya?
thanks, Shalini. Yeah. So, Shalini, on that line, right, I would just like to tag along. So, do you want to shed some light on this green software? Because whenever you talk for tech for good, right, that's one hype thing among the developers or coders or testers. What is this green software? So, since
Yes.
you spoke about developers, you could shed some light on that as well.
Yes, yes. So green software is an emerging field which is really sustainable software engineering. So is this software developed in the most efficient way and the most sustainable way, right? That is green software. In fact, Rajan will know Microsoft has launched a Green Software Foundation with a few partners, Accenture and ThoughtWorks, and they really want awareness to be built in the development community about how can we build sustainable software engineering. And there aren't too many courses that can teach you. You can't go get a degree on this, but there are bits and pieces of knowledge on this topic. So it is really thinking about all the mindset shift, the infrastructure, the tools to make sure that the software, the applications that you're developing are most energy efficient, they are most carbon efficient, they are looking at network efficiency, CPU, memory optimization, all of that. One is on the demand side, right? And then the other one is on the supply side when you're thinking about, okay, will this workload run on a data center that is powered green, right? So those are the two ends of green software.
Got
And
it, Shalini. That is a good.
there are some training on the public domain on this.
Yeah, that's really nice to know, Shalini, for people to at least start on, right? At least the coders. So, Varadarajendra, there was a good connecting point between Shalini, what she said, right, about Microsoft, and you're from Microsoft. So, see, nowadays, most of the online learning is done through browsers, right? And most of us, like, we do use apps, but predominantly because we're front of the laptop or monitor most of the time, thanks to COVID, that we are always having a screen time with the browser. So I did read a lot of articles where powerful methods can be used or extensions can be used in the browser in order to do sustainable development, right? And would you like to shed some light on how you can use powerful browser extensions to have a sustainable, good green code development done by the techies out there?
Absolutely, Ramya. Again, brilliant points by Shalini, right? Sustainability starts with, I think, common sense thinking, right from at a very granular level, where you start from the unit level of code and ensuring that you don't consume more than what you need. Brilliant points. And one aspect of sustainability that we look at, I mean, to be very honest, we haven't looked at that wearing a sustainability hat, but to think actually we have been kind of leaning towards it is not to have a bloated set of extension catalog, right? So, if you look at any extension store out there, there's a huge catalog of extensions, and where you will hardly see about 5 to 10% of the extensions actually being used. So you have a lot of software put out there, but not really being used by anybody, right? So we really are focusing on how do we get the right set of extensions to get people to kind of achieve what they want to do. For example, there could be a person who's got some kind of a vision problem or some kind of color blindness, and there could be extensions that actually make that efficient for them on the web. And you're right, some studies actually show that people spend anywhere between 60 to 70% of their time in a laptop on a browser, right? So it's a huge amount of time that they spend, and we actually look at a part of this the browser itself can provide. Like I was saying earlier, we have the immersive reader, for example, actually goes about ensuring that people actually have that hand holding when they actually let's say go through learning English as a second language, right? So and when they actually have some sort of, typically what they will actually invest a lot of time hand holding, finding out it's all available in one small space, so that they don't really actually expend more resources going through that browser experience, right? Whether it they're reading something on the internet for learning on a different language, how can we kind of provide them at that point in a different language, so it's actually they don't spend too much time browsing. So we take it for granted that we can search through a lot of things, spend a lot of time searching, but there's a lot of hidden cost behind it, right? So the quicker you find content, the quicker you actually are able to assimilate that content in the language that you understand, or quicker you are able to translate and transition to what the intent of the content is. Those are things that the browser as a platform provides. But then extensions, if you look at it, I mean, we've seen some really cool extensions from developers, especially there was one extension from a set of women students. This is actually an accessibility extension, LE. What they try to do is actually provide a way for auto captioning images for people who can't see, right? So when you're actually going through today, you look at any content, there's images in there, and it's, if you don't have the context of the image, you can go through the content without understanding what the content was about, right? So they built a very beautiful software which actually uses some sort of, like as you said, the buzzwords of AI/ML in the back end, but then actually delivering value. And that's what, coming back to where I started, right? We always, when we talk about browser extension development, which is actually a very easy set of project to do, right? So if you have some basic skills, you can actually build a browser extension. And if you want just to try like the hello world equivalent of a browser extension, you can do it in less than an hour, less than 30 minutes, right? So it's the skills required to build a browser extension is so low, and a lot of people actually kind of play around with it. There's a lot of dead extensions out there, right? So how can, I mean, there's one part where we want to learn how to build. There's another part there that there has to be an intent that I'm building something of value, and the value should actually result in some sort of life enrichment. Somebody's life should be made better, right? So they should be helped, their productivity should be boosted or something, right? So something happens where that value is delivered, and I actually take a ownership as a developer to manage that extension, ensure that I kind of leverage. And today what you use as a certain algorithm or whatever it is in the backend could tomorrow be made more efficient in the browser, right? So that's when you keep managing it, keep supporting it, and you actually ensure that your value is not like defunct, or it's not dead code, or is not consumed by anybody, right? So that's some extensions are super powerful that way, and super easy to build, but that also kind of creates this place where a lot of people start just building extensions out of the box, right? So that's where we call out saying, be mindful of the value prop that you can deliver, and make sure you take a commitment to manage.
Wonderfully said, Varadarajan. I think he brought a really good point, right? We keep on browsing so many things, sometimes from one page to another, and we end up spending 1 hour to just get a little bit of information, and we just think that it's fine. It's, my internet is free, it's unlimited. How does it matter to me? But we don't understand the repercussions, right? The impact on how much resource we are consuming. And the way even Shalini said, right? When we carve out Nimbus, like carve out resources from various cloud infrastructure, we blindly go ahead and carve out, just keep
Yeah.
them lying around. The repercussions are
Yes.
huge, right? So I'm really amazed by the the level of panelists, the way you people are talking, because the way even Aruna said, in terms of tech for good is not just taking all the latest technology and just trying to solve the matter over there, right? Understand the cause, understand the reason for it, and then try to see how you can solve that. So it's really enlightening for me to understand tech for good in a very deeper perspective, not just using technology for good, just as the name says. So on that that line, right, Aruna, there were various good points stated out by Shalini and Vardarajan on how, being in tech industry, how you can kind of contribute towards sustainability. So being part of Magasul, right, it is not fully end-to-end tech, right? You are using scientific methods. So what are the indigenous way through which a person who is like not fully into technology, because we have a lot of audience who are not like full-time IT employees, are not, they're all not techies, right? They must be from different fields. So what would you suggest, Aruna, like the indigenous way in how they can incorporate sustainability in their life and in turn help in tech for good? Like, for example, you can take your Magasul and how you are practicing tech for good over there through various approaches.
You're asking me lots of difficult questions, Ramya. And I'm
We
not
know
a,
you are the scientist
always
here,
the
Aruna, so
other
we
two
need to ask
panelists
you.
are cracking all the hard questions. Uh, but I'll try. I think it's not necessary to be a techie to do good, obviously. It's also not a impediment to be a techie to do good. You can do good. I think regardless of whether, as human beings, there are lots of things we can do first, even before as engineers. And some of those things are, it seems minor, but just to be aware of what are the problems, what leads to, bad income for a few people, bad working conditions for a few people, non-sustainable use of resources for us ourselves. Giving thought to that is important first. And one of the things I do is I get a little worried whenever I look at my trash can. Nowadays, I'm super worried on just looking at the amount of trash I collect. So I try to take goals on I will reduce the trash I generate by 50% within a week. And that means I don't shop online, which is sad because that's what used to pay my bills. For a long time, I worked in online shopping, but I would still work for it and not buy those things and let others buy them. But no, I'm just kidding. Those are some small ways. I mean, we can generate less trash. We can find ways to generate only wet trash, not use too much plastic, not use too much paper that you would discard, be a little conscious about compute resources that you use as techies, know that these things are also burning up data centers somewhere. They're consuming electricity that is probably way more unsustainable than even eating a little bit more. So think about it that way. What can you do? I think you can remain a little bit educated on these things, and you can also ask for political intervention in some of these things. As we talked about building a community of women in tech, of people in tech. I think building communities of people first is important. So in your local community, it's important to know how is waste recycled, how is electricity, how is water, what are the things that can be done, how to make them better, can I participate. I think these are some things that I would do. Again, as engineers, what can you do is really, I think what strengths engineers have is being able to look at a problem and think from first principles. That's really what engineering is. And if you look at what plagues anything, be it online learning, be it sustainable use of energy, be it agriculture or access to finance, whatever it is, if you look at the fundamental problem and you see that maybe I can do something that can impact people locally, then that would be a great way to participate. I know some people who have written small applications to collect food and distribute it within a community, to collect waste and recycle it. A lot of you wouldn't be aware that the plastic and the paper waste that you throw, even if you segregate it, just gets dumped into a landfill and burnt. It doesn't actually get recycled. There are very few recyclers. So how do you find these people? How do you build a network so that you can collect and give it to them at a regular cadence? These could be a mix of tech for logistics and actually putting in human capital to solve problems. But these would all be worthwhile to do in a community, in my understanding. It makes a huge difference. It also makes you feel much better.
Sure, sure. Well said. I think tech for logistic is going to stick with me, right? Tech for good has so many subdivisions that, it's not just technology, it's even logistic and even resourceful thinking, like how Aruna said, right? Just segregating trash is not going to make you an environmentalist, right? You need to minimize the usage of things which in the long run have an impact on the world, right? Thanks, Aruna. Thanks for that wonderful thought. So on that note, Shalini, would you like to share your insights on what would you want the audience to take away from this session with tech for good as the thought, right? But we dwell deeper into it. We try to understand, tech for good is not just using technology for a good cause. Rather, it has a lot of things, right? Like how Rajan said, right? Even you spending more time when assimilating information, you can get it if you develop good products and good extension. You get it in a shorter period with just few clicks. That saves energy, right? And we all think in our schools and colleges, teachers teaching about solid principles for writing code and following the first principles, like how Aruna said, is all waste of time. But it isn't, right? In reality, when you develop the product quality softwares, these all have very good usage. Efficient algorithm reduces resource usage, so you have a lot of learning. So what are your suggestions for the audience, Shalini, on that line?
Yes. Yeah, Ramya, great conversations. And I was just listening to what Aruna was saying about all the hard questions going to her because she has a PhD.
But
So,
it's not like that. I have posed hard questions to you as well.
no, I was just cracking up. Anyway, so when I was invited for this session, Tech for Good, and I thought to myself, I haven't actually um, taken this sustainability is what I live and breathe every day because I feel like it's where my analytical, technical thinking, my business thinking, my passion for evangelism, everything comes together, right? And tech for good, the way Aruna is doing, which is applying trying to solve a problem in a different field, right? It's required because there are a lot of I would say systemic societal challenges, and I'll name three of them, which are currently very very prominent, which is social inequity. Digital divide goes in there. Even marginalized farmers not being able to produce, this will in Africa, in India. And then there is climate change, and there are so many challenges related to climate change, whether it's air pollution, right? We are all confronting air pollution in our society. So there are so many of these areas where the simple technology or tools, like Aruna described, can be applied to solve the challenges. And climate change is rife with a lot of problem sets, right? One is how can we make EV more popular? There are so many things you can do. How can we solve such a deeply entrenched problem of air pollution, right? Um, and then the other aspect is that a lot of times we think that these bigger problems the government should solve, or at the policy level they should get solved, at the government level they should get solved. But the challenge that we have right now, and these are they are systemic risk because they are interrelated, and when they are interrelated and systemic, they interact with each other, and they can cause multiple repercussions, right? Like for example, if it's extreme high temperatures, you can't grow crops. Extreme high temperatures, people can't work, so they will fall out of jobs. People who are in unorganized labor. So the idea that I'm trying to push here is that these challenges are very tricky, and that it means that we have to attack them at all levels, including as individuals. So make your contribution in your personal life, in your personal sphere. Do the right, consume less. Don't waste food because it takes a lot of resources to produce food, right? So be mindful of what you're wasting, even in food on a day-to-day basis. Be conservative about your spending, right? Which is don't overuse of plastic, or just buying things that you think you won't use. Those are small measures. And when you come to technology, there are very small actions, like make sure you take what you need, because like Mahatma Gandhi said, the earth has enough for everybody, but not for their greed, not enough for their greed. So I guess I leave everybody with that.
Wonderful, Shalini. I'm just able to connect the dots, the way you said Aruna is working into agriculture, and whatever acts that we do, right, in terms of excess resource consumption affects the climate, in turn affects the farmers, and we don't get sufficient food to eat. They all are interconnected, right? Each one of the domain that you people are trying to create an impact is having such a vast impact, and they are all interconnected. We should not think things are isolated. And as Aruna and you said, right, tech for logistic is an important thing. Don't expect someone else to solve the matter, right? You do proper planning and proper logistic plan, right? Whom we can reach out to, how can we solve this problem will definitely help, not just using technology. So having said that, Varadarajan, last question over to you. So we all, they all spoke about, having a key takeaway for the audience. So in that line, I would like to take the opportunity to ask you, right, what would be your key takeaway to audience as a developer, as someone who is working on technology for the latest trend, like online education and all? What is your key takeaway that you want to give for audience, so that they can have a sustainability in whatever daily coding that they're doing, so that they understand the repercussion that it has? Just using an extra additional page to get information has a lot of impact, folks. So that's what Varadarajan said. So what would be your suggestion, Varadarajan?
Uh, thanks, Ramya. Again, like very, very powerful points, right? Hard core sustainability when you come to farming and all that, that's all like it really impacts us really directly. Like you don't get the vegetable tomorrow, you don't get the rice tomorrow, you don't get the food tomorrow. You feel it immediately, right? Whereas when it comes to technology, one thing like I would probably leave it with this, right? So I'm assuming that there are a lot of people here who also want to learn to code and want to build products, build tech products, and think of tech as a magic wand that solves problems, right? So uh, many often that's not the case, right? Most often, so it's usually I think Bill Gates said this once, like it only tech amplifies how good the solution is, right? So if there is a good solution and it works for one person, if you work for 10 people, if you work for 100 people, that amplification, it's an amplification platform, right? But then if the solution is flawed, from the get go, and you actually amplify the flaw, right? So when people set out building things, my humble request is, and I say this from my my personal exposure to edtech as an industry, right? So I see a lot of edtech platforms out there kind of beating the same problem statement over and over and over and over and again, and there's a lot of dead products. There are a lot of products that don't see traction, a lot of which means there are resources related to it that's getting consumed behind our vision, right? So without we being aware. So people who are starting out to code, people who are actually learning to build technology skills, one of the ways that you should look at is look at maybe extension is a beautiful way to kind of validate your thought. Like you can build a very small application that quickly validates. I'll give you an example, right? Postman, if you look at it's like last week or the week before that, it became a tech unicorn, right? So, and it started as a browser extension. So you can actually kind of ideate on something and try it out without wasting too much of resources, leveraging on powerful platforms like a browser like Edge. You can build add-ons, build extensions, and try out solutions for your problems. And that could be for tech for good. Like you could build solutions related to keeping track of COVID, or in terms of weather predictions. You can build a lot of extensions for that. But essentially, rather than going out, I wouldn't say rather than, I would say what are the first steps that somebody who's learning to code can actually, especially web development, can actually look at using extensions as a way to build products and see if I can immediately interact with customers, build something of value, and is it something that solves a problem, and if it actually solves it the way it should be solved, and then kind of grow it farther and better, right? So that's probably what I would leave the audience with.
Thank you, Varadarajan. So, Shubha, you want to join in and kind of conclude the session with any questions? That would be great. So, I would just say thank you to Aruna, Shalini, and Varadarajan for taking your precious time and letting us know. And for audience out there, if you want to know about Magasul, you can always reach out to Aruna, or you can just Google Magasul. So Aruna, you can just type in that for folks who are interested to know more and would like to contribute. And Shalini is from VMware, so she works on sustainability. So for folks who want to reach out to Shalini, feel free to reach out to her in LinkedIn, or if you're in VMware, you can reach out in VMware. So Shalini, I mean, if you could just type in your ID, it would be great for people who are sustainable champions to reach out. And Varadarajan is into edge education in Microsoft. So if you people are keen developers on how you can have sustainable coding done, please feel to reach out to Varadarajan. Varadarajan, you could just put in your details on the chat for audience to reach out. That would be great. So I'm very inspired today. So let me see what I can do going forward to be a sustainable engineer. So thanks a lot, Aruna, Shalini, and Varadarajan. So Shubha will ask a few questions to wrap up from the audience.
Yeah, thank you
Go
so
ahead,
much. It
Shubha.
was such a wonderful session, I mean, we always think of tech as something like we are going to Mars, we need SpaceX, the lofty things we think of first. But when it comes to like just like you, Vardarajan, you mentioned one extension, Shalini mentioned how, the dev environment has to be such. And Aruna, in your case, like how the smallest things, I mean, just reducing the waste, say, by 50% can go a long way. So I think I have one question for Aruna. So, like when you made a shift from corporate to that non-profit side, so what were the things that you thought were an unnecessary baggage while in corporate? Like people generally have this bias that if we are in corporate, we know better. But once you made that transition and you have been in both the worlds, what did you think was something that was an unnecessary baggage or something that was a wrong learning in corporate that you learned better when you went to the other side? Like some kind of a myth, if I may say.
Again, you are also asking me very hard questions. So
So
you guys
people have,
expect more wisdom from me than I have. So, you know, like, I think one definite myth is that I would say that people who are outside of profitable businesses are in any way less smart, or that it is their limitation that is preventing them from making a business profitable. I think this is a common thing we follow as a tenet across different companies, where if there is a way to grow something and if there is a way to make money, and we think that is the best way to do things. I mean, that's what a free market sort of teaches you, right? But there's another thing also in the free market on if you want to increase the amount of benefit, or if you want to increase the amount of welfare that you are able to do, then maybe it's not true that those who are not able to find a way to make money are somehow dumber. I think that is one myth that I have seen. I don't know if it is unnecessary. Sometimes in business, it might be necessary to have these myths to self-propagate, but to solve hard problems, it is unnecessary for the solution to be profitable.
right.
The second thing that is a myth that I have seen is that somehow we also have this feeling that if we are only able to apply technology in the sense of modern technology, it could be communication, it could be ML, it could be compute. If we are able to apply these problems, we will be able to solve problems from X to 10X. This is it's the new X to 10X sort of paradigm where we live, where we say that anything that is not able to scale is useless. So every solution must scale is how we think in technology. However, in the real world, it is not like that. It isn't that you only need scalable solutions to make a better world. You also have to have locally relevant, and you have to do good somewhere. And it's okay to do good in a small way than do no good. And lots of things that scale are so generic that they solve a very generic problem and they don't solve any specific problem for a large number of people. So scale is not awesome, is what I have learned, and scale is not
Right.
something to chase after. Is probably the second thing that I've learned, or I've unlearned and relearned.
That is really profound, Aruna, and I think that is totally against what the popular culture is right these days. But that is so true and so profound. Thank you so much for your thought there. So, Vardarajan, like you mentioned about extensibility in browsers, right? So, like somebody can just do their short or do their small bit by having, just building a small piece which is of some use, which is creating some value to somebody. So, what are the metrics where you define that the value is being generated, or when do you know that this extension is actually something that is delivering what it was intended to deliver?
Great question, right? So, I mean, to be very honest, I mean, there's I probably need to learn this from Shalini on how to kind of measure that for sustainability. But the real key here is there are a few simple metrics, right? How many users are really using it, and what kind of feedback come out of it? What are people talking about it? So we, for good or bad, technology has kind of enabled that sort of crowd sourcing feedback, and then there's a good amount of feedback systems available in pretty much for every extension out there, and you can actually see what kind of problems it is solving, whether it's superficial, whether it's real. As a ecosystem provider, we as long as the extension kind of meets certain criteria, we have to keep it out there. But then as users, they have the biggest as a consumer, you or I or anybody, right, who uses a browser actually has the most power, right? They can actually, with their simple democratic vote, if you want to call it that way, they can actually kind of propel the right extensions to the top, and kind of let the laggards be left out, and those probably are not adding any value. And you see that this is kind of true to any ecosystem where you have crowdsourced content or crowdsourced contributions, especially in extensions. When somebody has invested the time to go and download their extension, load it to the Edge browser, kind of use it a couple of times, and they're leaving some footprint, right? When I'm using, let's say, Grammarly, when I'm using Microsoft Editor, when I'm using the extensions, consciously, it's not like something that landed on my doorstep, right? So when I'm using it consciously, I'm actually making a subtle statement that this is valuable for me, and when I continue using it, I keep validating that. And that's probably how the simplest way we can see there is a user that comes in, there is a user who keeps coming in, there is a retention that's happening, there's a growth that's happening. Okay, this extension is probably of better value, right? And there are super examples of that. I mean, there are examples, like for example, Help a Bird or Toucan, which is helping in language learning, or there's a lot of extension examples where I can tell that they started very small, and user value kind of propel them to the top, where a lot of people started looking at those extensions, right? I hope that answered.
Yeah, thank you. That was brilliantly answered. So, to all the folks who had this question, so please use these metrics and try to figure out where you're delivering value. So, one last question to Shalini before I wrap up. So, Shalini, are you there? I think she might have some issues. Hey, yeah, Shalini, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm there, although I can hear you.
Okay. So one last question before we wrap up. I'll just tie all of these things together. So even though we are like what Aruna said, right? We are all trying to scale up and think of bigger and bigger things while littering around or creating a lot of garbage, so to say, like technical or different kinds. So when you talk of sustainability to the corporate leaders within, to different people, do you think that that conversation is challenging? Are people warming up to that idea, or is it a long way to go? Like, where are we right now?
That's a very good question, and it might take me a little bit of time. So I think there are different audiences for those conversations. So there's an audience which is there's a set of stakeholders who are external, right? So if you're a publicly traded
Okay, I think she had a glitch there.
very they think better because they're running their business in the right manner, right, and environmentally, socially conscious way. So that stakeholder, I think in the last 2 years I'm seeing a dramatic shift, right? So which means that the banks, the wealth managers, the mutual funds, uh, they are actually picking up on companies who are not doing their bit, like especially oil and gas companies, or they are getting battered because they are having shareholder activism. They have to set their net zero goals, all of that. Now come to the business leaders. I think because there's so much pressure from the financial industry, the business leaders have acknowledged that this is an important topic. But then again, depending on which sector you are in, the importance to how you actually merge that with the business strategy will change, right? So environmental social governance has been always a very big topic for like cement. Change or technology is an enabler, and technology can also cause digital divide and hence social inequity. So with that, the importance, especially for tech companies, on social equity and environment, especially for tech companies who have larger footprints, like if you're a Microsoft or an Apple or a Google, you have large footprints, like because you're running these large hyperscaler data centers. So it matters to you. A software company might think, why should it matter to me? Because you're developing things or services or solutions that others are using to develop their software. So, and that software is enabling the society to run digitally. So I guess the point I was making is that sector-wise, the importance by business leaders is changing, and it is becoming more and more relevant. The next set of stakeholders are employees, and I would say they are the most
Okay, I think it froze there, Shalini, for you.
and they can
Uh, hey, Shalini, we've lost you. You're in muted. You're muted, Shalini. Shalini, you're muted. Yeah. So, yeah, if you can just unmute and conclude on it, then we can end the session and Shubha can address the audience. You're muted. Okay. On that note, I'll take this opportunity to thank Aruna, Shalini, and Varadarajan for this wonderful panel. And we'd be very happy to have you again next year. So thanks a lot. And
Yeah,
over
thank
to
you
you,
so
Shubha.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ramya. So I think we were in the middle of a wonderful
Thank
session,
you.
and this can go on and on. But in the interest of time, thank you so much. We have a lot of things to do. I think a lot of places to improve ourselves. So we'll get right to it. And thank you so much all for your time. Bye. Have a good day. Have a good weekend.